Welcome back to the Occult Rejects. Today we have Marshall, better known as Marshall the Witch of Southern Light, a practitioner of the cunning arts, a writer, and a voice a lot of people in modern witchcraft have come to know through his books and his podcast work. He is the author of Cunning Words, The Red Mother, The Diary of an and The Diary of American Witch, and he is the co-host of Southern Bramble, a podcast of crooked ways. His work blends folklore, witchcraft, story, spirit, and lived practice in a way that feels old, rooted, and very real. So today we're going to get into his path, his practice, his books, and how he understands the crooked current of witchcraft in the modern world. And just a reminder as well, before I introduce everybody, there is a website that we do have. I am trying to just plug that more often so people know that we have it. If you're into reading, there is tons and tons and tons of stuff on there. I highly suggest to check it out. Also, multiple contributors. And we also do have a merch spot where we do have two different types of t-shirts that we do have available. And now, enough out of me. And let me introduce the other people joining us. We got Judith the Loon. What is going on, Judith? How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. Marshall, I can't wait to hear all you have to share with us. You could catch me on YouTube, on X, and on Spreaker as The Loon. Catch me every Sunday with Weekly Brunch. And once a month, if you happen to know anybody who's a veteran, I do Buddy Check. And thank you again, Nick.
Of course. Thank you. And Sonray, please let everybody know what's up with you. I know you've been on the show before, but in case they don't know who you are, introduce yourself a little bit and let everybody know where they can find all your amazing work, please.
I'm Sonray. I've got a YouTube channel, and I host a occult university, a mystery school, which you can find at www.theorderofchaosmagic.com. It's magic with a K. Marshall has given a guest lecture at over at school, as well as many other practitioners. And Marshall is one of the ones who I really look up to the most. So I'm very excited to be here and hear about your new book. I haven't read it yet. I'm going to. I'm very excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, man. Is there anything else you wanted to plug or anything before we go?
Oh, yeah. One thing, it's cool. As you guys know, I just recently finished my own book. And I'm doing 50 limited edition leather-bound hardcovers, which I'm binding myself, which are going to be very, very cool. There are 22 of the 50 left. If you would like to pre-order one of those, they're on my website under theorderofchaosmagic.com/books.
Awesome, man. Good for you. Congrats. Good luck on that. Yeah. So, Marshall, please let everybody know what's up with you, where they can find any of your stuff, promote whatever you got, let people know what's up.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. For people who don't know me, I'm Marshall, Witch of Southern Light, or Marshall WSL is my pen name. People can find me on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Witch of Southern Light, all one word. I am an author, and I do also have a podcast, like as you said, Southern Bramble with my co-host Austin. My 3 books, please. I'm an independent author and an artist. I do all the artwork, the cover work, everything. Binding your own books, that's amazing. That's pretty amazing. My first book is Cunning Words, Grimoire of Tales and Magic. The second one, which is kind of a spin-off or a continuation, The Red Mother, and now officially The Diary of an American Witch, which is 13 months of my life where I document experiences, theories on magic, my own personal practice, spells, spell mistakes, memories, and really influential experiences I've had in the past that kind of shaped me to be who I am as a queer Texas witch.
There you go. Awesome, man. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about your books too. I feel like kind of like looking at your stuff, I get more of like the folklore and the practical witch feel too. And I like that. I think that's a little bit different than other people out there sometimes, So it's a little bit, I think, different for my listeners. So I'm excited for this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely would ascribe the title like folkloric witch, traditional witchcraft, animism. It's much more and Sonra knows this. I love the power of a story. I love the way that magic flows through a tale and how so many stories throughout history weren't just things to say around the campfire. They taught lessons, they taught recipes, they taught songs, they taught epic tales. You read about these epic poems in the bardic tradition of teaching a story through song. I think that that is kind of where the heart and crux of where my own practice and witchcraft lives, in that power of the story. And honestly, a lot of the untold stories, I think a lot of folk practitioners, whatever that may have been described at the time, may have not had the power or ability to have told in the past. So I kind of want to reach into this. I always call it the mystical yesteryear because my stories don't have a time frame, but it is very clear that they exist some point in the past in history, and they seem to motivate and inspire the practitioner of magic within the story. They have experiences that push them to make deals with spirits at crossroads, or seek to know the spirit of herbs or plants or sigils or conjurations. And a lot of times, I think in modern publications, which is it's very pervasive, where we see lots of how-to books, lots of one-on-one books, lots of people writing about their craft, which I think is lovely and beautiful. But sometimes I feel like we're missing the whimsy in witchcraft. We're missing the mysterious. We're missing that eerie fog in the forest where the witch is believed to reside. A lot of times in history, before we get to some of the witch trials, if we go back even further, the witch was this mysterious creature. It was almost not even entirely human. They were a spirit inhabited human that existed somewhere in a liminal space. And we see that in a lot of older historical stories. We see that they aren't just a person that lives amongst the community, they're an outsider. They're someone you go and seek when you are at your most desperate. And sometimes there's a little bit of a trickery going on, and sometimes it's just straightforward. I can do this for you for a price. And I don't think a lot of those things get discussed in modern witchcraft enough. And that's kind of where a lot of my inspiration for my practice comes from.
I like how you said that. Like I would say, like, we could be looked at as like you said, as an outsider, but then someone's kid gets sick enough, all of a sudden they're coming to you and asking you for help. Ain't that funny now?
I have. Would you say it's you're putting to print and hitting a larger scale than those that? Because what you're talking about is what people, and it doesn't matter if you're here in the U.S. or anywhere. You're in that small town, and it's the whispers. You're putting the whispers of, go over here if you need this done, and this person could do this for you, but be quiet about it and stuff like that. And tell that's the feeling you're giving me, that the stories that your grandma used to tell you when they wanted you to behave.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's very, very true. There's a couple of great books that I've come across that I think are really fascinating. The Silver Bullet and Other American Witch Stories, I think, is a fascinating one. It was a collection of documents where this author went and interviewed a lot of Appalachian residents who had been there for generations since their families immigrated, and they brought over with them their stories. And we see many of these stories that set root in America, but also come from over in the UK. They come from Europe. They come from Germany. They come from Italy. They come from these places where entertainment was stories, but also information was stories. And so you read some of these, like there's a whole collection of interviews where he asks these residents, these people who are living there, how does one become a witch? And with each story he gets different types of folklore around. Under the full moon at midnight, you go up to this mountain and then you put one hand over your head and one hand under your foot and you say, I renounce my baptism and I give everything between these two hands to the devil. And like, these are stories that were passed down, and I feel like many of them seem to have gotten somewhat lost, because when an oral tradition stops being spoken, we don't get to continue to pass them down, and still within some families and communities we see this. Um, but I wanted to share my craft in a way that gave new stories, stories that were clearly inspired by history, but also very much by my own life. In my first book, Cunning Words, there's a story. Uh, it's actually a story about a smallpox outbreak, and these power of three spirits who come together: the red fox, the black fox, and the white fox, and what they do to heal this, dying queen in this tower who's lost her husband. And what was very interesting is, as I was writing that story, and I promise you the whole story gets better, but just go and read it. I think it's very fascinating. What was actually going on in my life is where the town where I live was actually having a huge monkeypox outbreak. And this was the time in I want to say late 2022, early 2023, when monkeypox was making its way through the country, and the gay community was the largest community being affected at the time. I was watching as people were having to lock themselves away for weeks, 1 to 2 weeks at a time, with these painful pox that did not exist in this country for over a century and a half. We had no vaccination for it. We had no recourse for it. I was watching as the political sphere was using it as an attack on the queer community. I was watching all these things happen, and I was like, this is history repeating itself in the most basic of ways. And I remember I had a good friend of mine. I had four different friends at that time who were all being isolated from a monkeypox outbreak, and they were positive. They were living with these deeply painful sores and hard fevers and really, really, really aggravating body aches. And it was on day 10, my friend reached out to me, and he said, I don't know what to do anymore. It's not going away. Is there any way that I could ask for your help? And he knew I was a witch. And it was actually this charm that I had written based off of a little story, The Three Wise Healers, about these three spirits, one with red hair, one with black hair, one with white hair, and how each one, it was just a little chant that I had made myself before I ever wrote this book. And I said this chant over a collection of herbs and put it in a little sachet, and then I braided a red thread braid necklace while continuously saying this charm. There once were three wise healers, one with hair as red as blood, one as black as a raven, one as white as flax. The first one healed your wounds, the second took your pain, and the third one made you whole again. And I would just say it over and over and over again while I'm braiding this. And I went to his place, I knocked on his door, I told him I was there, and I put it on his mat because I couldn't go in. It's a very, very contagious pox. And so I left. He texted me, said thank you. Within 2 days, they started scabbing up. The pain went away, the fever dropped, and he told his friend about it. His friend messaged me and asked for the same thing. So because I said this charm and gave this to them, and I watched what happened with them healing from it, I decided to write a story about it. And I built this grandiose story about a smallpox outbreak that was affecting this kingdom, and the story kind of unfolded. And because historically stories were inspired by real events that were happening at the time, we don't always know those real events because now it's so many centuries later. Like, not many people know that Ring Around the Posy was written about the Black Plague. Not many people know that so many of these things that were written about and passed down were actually written about modern things that were happening at that time. And so if you read my first book and second book, Cunning Words and the Red Mother, you'll notice a lot of author's notes where what inspired this story was something that was either happening to me in my life or politically or to my community. And I wanted people to know this is where that story comes from, and this is what the outcome of that story is.
Wow, this is wild.
That's
It was
incredible.
wild.
That's so cool.
Yeah, right. That's cool that shit worked, dude. That is wild, dude. Damn.
Well, magic works, and I think that that's the main message that is. It's not that it's missing. People are shouting it from the rooftops, but it's hard to get through to people. And one of the things that I think Marshall does better than anyone is get it through, because story does that, right? And the way that Marshall like, sorry, I'm gonna fanboy for a second, so he's gonna have to give me a minute here. But the way, like, Marshall changed my life because when he did the guest lecture over at the Order of Chaos, he talked about desire and about story. And I struggle, like, I love talking about magic, but if I were going to talk about magic for 3 minutes, I'm going to pull up a graph and a chart, and it's going to be like math. And that's the way that I do and teach magic, and like I think that's important also, but it doesn't penetrate the subconscious. You have to do that part through the mechanisms that I'm like, here's how you do that, but Marshall's just doing it. And it's powerful, and it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up.
Well, you know, the power of a story is really amazing because it evokes emotion, and I think emotion is the crux of magic. Like when you feel something, when the hair on the back of your neck stands up, when the goosebumps on your arms prick, that is a vibration within the body that actually moves something. That's cellular. And I do think that sometimes when you're, performing a spell, there are times where I am working with, there's a collection in my book that talks about working with the days of the week as magical vectors for the planets, right? And so I have these chants that I might do over a talisman that I'm calling upon the power of Saturn or Venus or Mercury for something that I've written down on their seal and folded up and made into a little paper talisman. And, the numbers that correspond with those planets, I'll chant it that many times. And I noticed that, something that may call for 7 chants or this chanted 7 times, the strain that goes through me as I'm chanting it on that 3rd, 4th, 5th time, the hoarseness of my voice, the way that I call out, the cadence that changes as I can feel, the power and the desire and the want and the need for change. It's building. It's energetic. It's very much. It reminds me very much of that old concept of the cone of power when you have, the coven dancing, envisioning this power growing into an apex point, pushing it out as you all fall down to let it go. That happens when you chant. That happens when you use repetitive wording. You can feel something start to move inside of you that's not quite the same thing as I drew this symbol, I burnt it in my cauldron, and then I went and made breakfast. Like, I love that, and sometimes that's simplicity really works. But I want to when I approach my craft, I do it very much with feeling. And when I teach it, I have to find a way to make others who are learning it feel it too.
Yeah, you definitely do that with the power of the story.
Marshall, how did you learn to do that? When did it click for you that was the way to do it? Or is this how your brain works? Like what?
My brain never turns off. I was literally thinking about this earlier today. There is not a moment of silence in my life as long as I am alive. I am either singing something out loud, whether it's a real song or words that are stupid because I'm singing them to my dog who's deaf and can't even hear me anymore. Like I'm talking to myself. I'm thinking about things. There is not a moment where my brain just shuts up. And I do find that kind of allowing that to roam can feel like a journey, and it can be kind of fun. Sometimes it takes you to weird places. I do know I've had some really weird experiences between where I let my brain take me and when I especially start to mix it with my craft. I do all my writing on the elliptical, like at the gym. Like I get on the elliptical, I put on Lindsey Sterling electric violin, and I just get in the notes app and I start writing. And sometimes, all of a sudden,
flow state, probably.
What's that?
I get into some sort of flow state like that.
That's exactly what it is. It's almost like a trance state. This zhoo, zhoo, zhoo,
Yeah,
zhoo,
that's
kind of
awesome.
the repetitive movement. I used to take spin class, and I remember there was this one instructor who did a really, really good job about creating this flow state. And I remember feeling something that was very different from just exercise. It felt almost transcendent, like I was pushing my body to experience something that was out of body. And I started trying to kind of channel that into my writing. And now I cannot write if it's not on the treadmill, on the elliptical, if I'm not in this repetitive motion. If I'm at the couch on my phone typing or like on the computer, I'm just like I don't, my butt hurt. Like I don't know, my mind's going other places. It's almost like I need my body to be a little bit removed so I can focus, if that makes
I
sense.
know exactly. No, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, that is wild.
I use binaural beats for the same reason.
Love binaural beats.
Yep.
I know a
I
lot of
should
people.
exercise. That's probably a better idea.
I should try that.
I have an elliptical right there that I bought, and I used it one time.
Well, you know, there's a in my book so I wrote The Diary of an American Witch alongside writing The Red Mother. I was
Oh,
writing them at the same time. So one of the things that really stood out to me is as I was writing, there's a section called The Seven Nights of Celestial Transvection, which is a 7-day ritual where you are doing, and transvection just meaning spirit flight or witch's flight, where you are doing a meditation and trance work to experience flying to the temple of Saturn, flying off to the temple of Venus, flying off to the temple of Jupiter, then Mercury, then Mars, then the moon, and then of course the sun. And I was writing it based off of a story where this character, the Red Mother, is going on a pilgrimage and she's traveling across the land and she stops at each one of these temples, learning the magic of each planetary priest or priestess. And I loved this story because it was categorizing her journey and learning the craft. And I said, well, how can I actually turn this into something that other practitioners can do? And so I started writing out these rituals that involved a kind of a step-by-step process of creating a trance-like state and then flying off to go to these places and then actually checking in with yourself. When you are there, what does the air feel like on your skin? What smells are you smelling? What colors are you seeing? What vegetation are you seeing? What do you feel under your feet when you land? What color is the door of the temple? What sound does it make when you open it? What does it feel like to the touch? I want you to have a very intense sensory journey. So when you come back, whatever has come to you in this trance-like state, you can then take it, you can write it down into your grimoire, your book of shadows, your magical record keeping. You now have a closer relationship with that planetary spirit should you need to call on them again. You now know what stones might be better to use to call upon their power. You might know what herbs that you're not going to find in Llewellyn's complete book of correspondences because the spirit told you in this experience instead. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write this ritual out, but I can't publish it if I'm not going to do it if I haven't done it myself. So the
Mhm.
diary actually documents me doing this myself. And I recorded myself like an actual audio recording of me going there and then kind of vocalizing my experience along the way. And then I just, stream of consciousness after the fact, wrote out what my experience was. And I had no idea what was going to happen when I went to these temples. I had no idea what I was going to see or what I was going to feel. And there were a lot of surprises. There were a lot of things that I came out of it thinking like, okay, I feel like I can understand that this was catered to me. And if someone else was going to do this, it's going to be catered to them. And I think I've spoken to a few people who have been doing these rituals and they're coming up with these wild experiences, which are very different from mine, and I think that's very much on purpose. Um, I and it's not 7 days in a row because the experience is backwards. It's actually 7 weeks, 1 day a week. You start with the Temple of Saturn, then you wait a week and you go start and you continue with the Temple of Venus on Friday. And then you wait a week and you do the Temple of Jupiter on Thursday, and then Wednesday with Mercury, and then Tuesday with Mars, and then Monday with the moon, and then finally Sunday with the sun. And because it takes at minimum 7 weeks, you have time in between these to observe your life, observe the experiences you have in between these time periods. I started noticing, especially after doing the Temple of Jupiter, some financial stresses that were happening. And I had some interesting things that happened with money popping up and savings that I didn't know I'd had. After the Temple of Mars, I'm a hairstylist by trade. I had a client come in I'd never seen before, and he was the spitting image of the visualization I had when I was at the Temple of Mars. And he was a metalsmith and a woodworker. Like, it was just this crazy experience. And part of the ritual that I had written in advance was observe your life. What comes in? What experiences are you having? How are you noticing that you might be able to apply the new things that you learned? When I was leading up to the Temple of the Moon, I was having a ton of intensely emotional experiences, moments where I would, burst into tears at small provocateurs or extremely loving moments with a very, very close friend. It was very emotional. And the moon and the flow of water and water magic and emotion and psychology, that is uh, um, the virtues of the moon and Monday. And then strange. It was very, very strange. And I got to document all of that in my diary so people could see what I experienced, take it in, and then have the opportunity to go and do it themselves.
I, I, I like the fact that you
Awesome.
include not only the emotion, but events that happen leading up to your ritual and events that happens after. Because I think when most people practice, they forget that the energy is going to be around them. They forget to see the signs of it's working. Because I guess, I don't know if you will agree with me, people, when they plan a spell, do a spell, they expect a certain outcome.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come in that form, they think it didn't work.
Mm.
Yeah, in the beginning for sure. That happened to me, of course.
Outcomes in spellcraft are really fascinating. Another thing I was able to document in this is um, I am one of those people that believes that magic in general works, but very often does it not work in the way that you think it's going to. Magic is like water in a river. It is flowing, but you know what? It's flowing around boulders. It's flowing around tide pools. There are times that the water is more dry and low, and times that it is a river rapid. And sometimes you might find that there are boulders that it's going to take a long time to get around, but eventually it's going to make its way to its final end. The thing is depending on the go arounds it has tried to make, that end result might come a little differently than you thought it would. Sometimes it's the most mundane thing. The most mundane thing. Like, I had a situation where a friend of mine, his ankle was swollen and hurting. And so I did a healing spell for him. And then it swole up like crazy. And he had to go to the doctor. The doctor said, "You have gout. Like, you have gout. You need to do this, this, and this. I'm going to prescribe this." Like, he needed a direct medical protocol to treat this gout. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't done that. Um, I think that healing magic can heal something just as much as it might bring you to the medical care that you need. Because especially a lot of people are really, really, listen, people don't like doctors. Healthcare in America is expensive. People will avoid it as much as they can. And sometimes magic might end up meaning that it exacerbates the situation to force you to get the medical care needed. And sometimes it just makes it go away, depending on how it's going to do its job. You give a spirit an assignment, the spirit's going to do that assignment. You don't always know how it's going to accomplish it.
That actually, that example actually brings up another question. When we do spells,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing it because we believe we deserve, and we're at a status in our life where we could accept what we're asking for. Now, those turns and those boulders, would you say it is bringing you up and giving you the experience to better accept what you are asking for? Because sometimes you may think, I may think I want $1 million. I get that $1 million from playing the lotto and I blow it the next day. Didn't pay my debt, didn't do anything. So for people who likes to do money spells and lotto spells, maybe you're not getting it because you are not there. Because that's what your example is showing when it comes to spell work.
No, absolutely. I also I would definitely agree with that. And I don't think it's 100% always that. Sometimes those boulders and those rocks and those tide pools, Sometimes those are just real life blockades. Like sometimes those are like I have known people to cast spells that have zero road to fruition. They will, they'll do a money spell for the lotto, but they won't buy a ticket. Like, and that's a very simple one. They'll do a job spell, but they won't apply to any job. So a lot of times magic needs to pair with the mundane, but sometimes people won't because they just think magic should do all the work. We still have to do the physical work too. If you banish someone and then you continue to call them every day, what are you doing? Like that's not people will do a cord cutting and then literally immediately text them. It's wild to me. And don't even get me started on TikTok cord cutting spells. What does this mean? What does this mean?
I think people do that frequently as a way, and I don't think they're doing this on purpose. I think that they want to convince themselves that magic does not work because it absolves them of some responsibility in the situation. You do cord cutting and then you text the person immediately. Oh, magic doesn't work. God damn it. Why did I text that person? Well, because you did that. Like,
you did it.
Yeah. But I do think that had you not done that spell, Marshall, it's a good chance that person would have lost their foot. Because doubt, if it goes on long enough and you just don't do shit about it, it's too late.
It's too late. And he's doing great now.
Awesome.
That's a plus. Did anybody have any questions or anything before I go into some other stuff?
I was thinking of something just a second ago, but my brain.
Oh, you lost it.
my brain's the same way. I will have what I think is the most excellent thought, and then immediately it just goes out the other ear.
Oh yeah, no, I know what it is now. So because you mentioned something that's happened to me and a number of other practitioners as well. You talked about this person who came in to get your services as a hairstylist, who was the embodiment of was it Jupiter? You said
this one was Mars, actually.
Mars. So okay, how did that affect you? Because I've had that same experience, and it's a real physical person enters your life that is clearly archetypal and the result of spell work, but they're standing right in front of you.
Yeah,
they're solid, and it to me, it's like my brain doesn't recover from that. Like it's changed permanently. So how did that affect you?
Oh, I still think about it today. Like it is one of those things where I think, and this kind of goes with what you were just talking about before too. I think that there are a lot of people, like, listen, we're all online. I think there are a lot of people who profess to be great and powerful witches online, but in reality, they don't believe in their own magic. They don't even believe in magic. I think that there are a lot of people who talk big, but then they don't actually believe in it. And to be perfectly honest, I think there are a lot of spiritualities who identify with the culture that they are involved in, that is part of their community, but at heart they're secular. And that in itself, in general, is not a bad thing because it's great to be part of your own culture and community. But at the same time, when it comes to witchcraft, when it comes to magic, I don't understand. I don't really understand the concept of having a craft that you secretly, sometimes even a secret from yourself, don't really believe in. Like, it's a shock when it actually works. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, as I even say that, for this guy to show up, I was just like, oh my God, like, this is what, like, it was unexpected. And I kept talking to him and asking questions, and I know that this was a person, but it was just weird that it was his first time, and he wasn't even one of my regular clients. He was actually someone else's who called out sick that day, so they moved him over to my schedule. And we had a great conversation, but at the same time, it brought me back to seeing a real life in-person outcome based off of a ritual I did to bring me closer to this, to be awash within the spirit for the week. Because when I was doing this, the idea is when I come out of this, I am now awash in the spirit of Mars. I am awash in the spirit of the moon. I'm awash in the spirit of Jupiter. I have taken in what they have to teach me, and now I need to go out into the world and either apply it, internalize it, write it down, try to figure out and understand how it applies to my own practice. And again, now I have more information when I want to call them up. We are now closer I am now closer to the spirit because I've done this. I've reached out. I've gone to their temple and I have said, I want to learn from you. What do you have to show me?
Yeah. That's, oh my God. So, when this has happened to me, and I've heard this story now from the third practitioner to have said something to me almost identical to this, and I've had this experience myself. And to me, it was the moment where, and it's not that I didn't believe. Well, I believe in spirits. I've always believed in spirits, but I believe, and I'm not saying that you should believe or anyone else should believe. I'm not saying telling around to people what is happening here, what's objective, but I see that as spirit inhabiting a body and coming to talk to you. And it's like I don't believe in coincidence at all. That's kind of like the crux of the way that I think of magic. Is that coincidence isn't real. But I just, when spirit takes form and is standing right in front of you, and I think it happens way, way, way more often than people realize. But when you have the opportunity to experience it and realize it, that's when it's so incredibly mind.
100%.
And I wanted to comment also on what you said about disbelief, like people not really believing, and kind of say that is why, that exactly right there is why I have changed what I call my practice from chaos magic to chaos witchcraft. Because chaos magic is secular, and I'm not. And that's it. I think that chaos magic, I'm not trying to knock it. I make videos defending chaos magic, even though I have many disagreements with Peter Carroll. But like at its core, it is like, oh, it's all just a trick of the mind.
And while I totally see that. And while I very much recognize the value of secular witchcraft, my personal craft is spirit based. It is very animistic. It's very animistic. Everything that exists has spirit. The herbs that we use are not a recipe. They are spirits who carry virtues. I am asking them or telling them, this is your assignment. I'm putting them in this bag. I don't know, these 3 herbs with a scroll written what its assignment is, and I may say a few words over it or give it 3 breaths of life and lock it tight. I have done something that is way less like a recipe and more like a verbal or written contract with a single or collection of spirits. And there are grand spirits and there are small spirits. It's as simple as Austin likes to put it this way. I love it. And my co-host from the podcast. There's the spirit of rose, and then there's the spirit of the rose I grew in my backyard that I picked and I'm holding in my hand.
That's yeah.
Somebody does have feedback or some buzzing noise coming through. It got really bad before. I don't know if like somebody's wires may be loose on their stuff. It kind of.
I hear it too, actually.
Yeah. It comes and goes, but it's like getting worse at this point now.
Is it me when I talk?
No. You know what? I've muted I think almost everybody and can't figure out who it's coming from. To tell you the truth, it just keeps just showing up.
It's Mars.
Yeah, I don't know.
We called him up.
All right, hold on 1 second. Let me try. I think it was you, Marshall. I think it is you. Yeah, it's gone now. Yeah, maybe it's your headset or something.
Do you want me to unplug and just use my computer one?
Oh yeah. Try that. Maybe we'll see if that works. Yeah. You might have to go into settings and unfortunately pick the right mic now. I'm so sorry. Yeah, StreamYard isn't. I think you might be good now.
How's that?
Perfect. Oh my. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Oh. So one thing was there anything you guys wanted to keep saying? I'm sorry, I kind of interrupted you. I probably threw you all off now. I don't know where you might have been.
I think I'm good.
All right. One thing I did want to ask you, Marshall, because American Witch, what does that mean to you?
When I first, that's a big question.
Sorry.
No, well, the reason I titled it The Diary of an American Witch is because when I first started writing it, the title was actually The Diary of a Witch, and it was very much inspired by Sybil Leek. She wrote The Diary of a Witch, and it was published in 1969, and she was a British practitioner, generational. She lived in southern England, and she had a life story to tell. But as soon as I was reading it, the first thing I noticed was this isn't a diary, it's a memoir, which is cool and it's wonderful. And I enjoyed reading it and everything she had to share. But I really wanted to read a diary. Like, oh my gosh, who doesn't love the idea of going to an old estate sale and coming across someone's diary? I would pay $5 for that and I would absolutely read it.
It's like reading an American Horror Story or something.
It is. But when I finished the book, one of the things that I really took notice of was I started in October of 2023 and I went all the way to the end of October 2024. And I didn't think about the fact that I'm writing this during an election year. I'm writing this during a time that war is breaking out across the world that America has involvement in. I'm writing this at a time that I am seeing a lot of political movements and shifts happening. I'm writing this in a time where my perspective is definitely uniquely American. And it was very different from Sybil Leek's as a British witch. And I figured, at this point in time, based off of everything that I have documented over these 13 months, the viewpoint and experience of me is an American witch. And so it made a lot of sense, and it seemed to be important to make sure that that perspective was clear when someone buys this book. So many of the books that we have that historically have been these big motivators in modern witchcraft have not come from here. They've come, from the UK especially. So that seemed to be really important to me because as a traditional witch, and I'm very inspired by Gemma Gary's works out of Cornwall. She wrote Traditional Witchcraft, A Book of Cornish Ways, The Devil's Dozen, and The Black Toad. All very inspiring, but again, they are a perspective of a West Country English witch. And because traditional witchcraft is very bioregional, meaning it is the spirit of the land on which I reside, it is the herbs I grow in my garden, it is the genius loci of my locality, it made more sense that my practice is recognizably American, and not just American, but Texan, and not just Texan, but my local neighborhood. Like, these are the spirits that I'm working with. I live in the neighborhood of my city. It's literally like a small pocket of community of a lot of gay people, gay bars, shops, restaurants. I live in a building that was built in 1985. And when I first moved in, there was a lovely older man who, I met, who was living here, and he invited us over, me and my friends. And we walked in and he was showing his apartment, his condo, and this wall of pictures. And we were looking at all of these pictures that dated back decades. And he was like, that's so-and-so, and he lived over in unit 321. And that's so-and-so, and he lived over in unit 156. And that's so-and-so, and he lived just a block down the way. And Stephen up here, he died in 1985. And that's Daniel, and he died in 1989. And that's so-and-so, and he died in 1991. And I started realizing I was looking at a cemetery of photographs of all of his friends who all died right here. This was during the AIDS epidemic of the 80s and 90s, and the neighborhood has existed longer than that here in the city I live in. And I was watching, realizing by the end of him sharing this with me that he was the only one left. He was the only one who survived from all of his entire group of friends. And so I really took a step back and I thought about the place in which I live right now, the building I live in, the literal walls around me that house these people who lived this beautiful, queer, joyous life, whose lives were cut short. They didn't get to tell their stories. They didn't get to live all the way to the end. They didn't get to be the point where my neighbor was, where he can now share their stories with a younger generation. And I think a lot about that when it comes to the locality of my craft, the spirits I'm calling upon, the queer dead who existed here, who still want to dance, who still want to love, they still want to party, they still want to be a part of life. And I want them to participate in that with me. I want to show them reverence, and they're the spirits of my land.
That was great. I really like how you said, you do have, probably, except for, maybe the last, 40, 50 years, you really don't have too many people, I think, over in the United States that have really made a name for themselves as like an American witch, like you're saying. It's something fairly new, at least from my experience, especially being a ceremonial magician. A lot of stuff
Definitely.
is, going back to people in Europe, to tell you the truth, so I hear what you're saying with that. That's pretty cool. Go ahead, Judith. Sorry.
You brought up the UK, and Freda Jester in the chat had a question on your thoughts about the Witch's Bible. I haven't thought about that book in years.
I saw that. I was like, oh, wow.
I have no necessarily positive or negative things to say about it. I remember skimming through it a long time ago. I was probably actually too young to be reading it. Actually, a few of the books I started with, I was probably a little too young to be reading. I mean, I was 12 when I discovered witchcraft was real. I was 12 years old reading Raymond Buckland's complete book of witchcraft with,
wow.
I mean, there were images drawn of, sky-clad initiators that were bound and tied behind their hands behind their back. And, it was very interesting trying to explain to my mother that no, it's a religious ceremony. No, it's not inappropriate. And when I got a chance to kind of flip through and see the Witch's Bible, it was very inspired by the time. What was the author's name? Was it Janet something? And it was her and her husband, I believe, that wrote it. I could be mistaken on that, so don't quote me. But I remember it was a very traditional and ceremonialized practice of Wicca at the time, and Wicca and witchcraft at the time were also very synonymous, especially in America. That was really the only thing that was traveling over here when it comes to modern witchcraft and the religious aspect of it. I think it's probably a great read for people wanting to learn about their tradition of Wicca and paganism, but I do not think that book itself is a catch-all generalization of what witchcraft is.
I don't think such a thing exists.
No.
It couldn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
I agree. Did anybody have anything that you wanted to ask or bring up before I start asking other stuff?
Sorry, my kid's asking me for candy. I had to.
Oh no, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. What's one thing that you hope that people will get out of American Witch?
I hope that they'll find that I have had experiences as a practitioner that I think a lot of us have, but we haven't had the freedom and ability to talk about them. Sometimes they're weird. Like some of these experiences are weird, and we kind of get nervous about sharing them. And I think so many new practitioners are afraid of things like backfires. They're afraid of things like I do think that especially modern America and horror movies have taught us to be afraid of spirits, of conjuring, of experimenting with magic. I do a lot of magical experimentation in my book, and I want people to see what that lived experience was like, what the outcomes were like, what some of my mistakes were that I would change differently. I think when we read each other's experiences, not just recipes, we can start to learn from each other's mistakes as well as successes. I hope people read it and they go, I've had a very similar experience, and I didn't know if it was real or if anyone else would understand that.
Yep.
But Marshall had it too. So there's the validation there. There's honestly, I'm going to be really frank here. There's also somewhat of a voyeuristic complex that I think many of us are not really ready to admit that we have. We want to watch what happens behind closed doors when people perform magic. We want to see what happens. We want to experience it. We want to learn from each other. And it's very easy to read a how-to book and a recipe and try to do that recipe. But it's very different when you watch someone or read about someone's experience when they do it. I think that there's a difference between a lived experience and a theory.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. And it's so important. Yeah, I try to facilitate that through the Order of Chaos community so that everyone can share and talk about their experiences. But again, like the way that I teach magic is very much like it's like a textbook. Like here's formulas and things that you can do to get these experiences for yourself. But I think one of the problems with being a solo, so I think there's huge advantages to being a solo practitioner, but one of the big disadvantages is people who are strictly solo practitioners, unless they just have incredible faith, will always end up saying, "Am I just crazy? Am I just crazy? Did that just happen, or am I crazy?" Right? And then doubt starts to creep in, and without that validation from other people having similar experiences, or just you know knowing that other people are going through the same thing, you start to doubt yourself.
To piggyback on that one, do you think you're not doing something right if you don't ask yourself if you're crazy?
That's true. I mean, that's a good point.
That's a good question.
Um,
Depends on your level of arrogance. I don't know.
one thing I did also want to get into a little bit, if you wanted to get into it, the podcast as well.
My podcast?
Yeah. How did that come to be?
I met Austin on Instagram back in 2020. I thought what he was sharing was beautiful work. I thought it was so fascinating. It was very interesting. In a world of content of, beautiful, soft aesthetics, he was kind of dirty. He was kind of hard. He was doing some things that I thought were get your hands in the dirt witchcraft. And I started, just sharing these videos, these little posts on my story. We became good friends. We started doing Instagram lives together, chatting about magic and witchcraft. And, we're both two Southern queer witches. He lives in Florida. I live in Texas. And we wanted to get together and make a podcast to share our perspectives, to talk about magical topics, to interview authors. One of the things that I think we both had a hard agreement on was the concept of the queerness of witchcraft, the otherness of it. And when I say queer, I don't mean specifically LGBTQIA+. I don't mean, alphabet mafia only. I mean the otherness, the edginess, the people that are marginalized and pushed to the edges, that lead them to a space of magic, that lead them to a space of finding their empowerment, finding their place of, I am now so desperate to make this thing happen, to change this thing. I don't have any other recourse. Where's my community? Like, when I was young, that was my experience. That's what led me to witchcraft. Being much more of an effeminate man or a boy when I was young was a very, very ostracizing experience. And being led to the church, and not led to, being brought to the church at a young age, and being taught that everything I was feeling and experiencing inside was wrong. It led me to a place of, when I found witchcraft, I found the beauty in my femininity. I found the beauty in my differentness. And so when it comes to witchcraft and our podcast, we really found that liminal space of queerness, if you will, that space of, we are living somewhat in the margins of spirituality here. And being in that liminal space, we found another sense of community with another. We found other authors, other creators who were also experiencing that. And we would invite them on the show and we would talk, and sometimes they'd be authors or other creators, or they would be other podcast hosts. We did a lot of great crossover talks, which were really fascinating, especially with different practices. Learning from each other, I think, is one of the greatest things that we can do, especially in a spirituality that unfortunately has historically always been about secretiveness, and not just secretiveness, but elite exclusiveness. The internet changed that for so many of us, and we're going on 6 years now with the podcast, and we've had an ability to talk to people I never thought I'd have. The ability to ask direct questions to. We had Jim McGarry on the podcast, and this is a woman who I had down low been idolizing because she taught me so much through her work. And then I met people who I never would have known just because someone suggested, hey, you should check them out. They'd be great on the show.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice. Yeah, for sure. Even with the experience I've had on this show in like the last year or two, some of the people I've had on, it's just like I cannot believe I'm having a conversation with these people. Like when I got into what I was doing, it's like I was reading their books, like listening to them on other shows, and I'm like, now you're fucking talking to me? What?
It was really amazing. On the podcast, we were able to have the guest Christine Cunningham Ashworth. She is Scott Cunningham's sister, and she wrote his biography, postmortem biography. And I was reading it to prepare to have her come on the show, and I noticed so many similarities between me and my own sister. The same 3-year age gap, me being, her gay older brother, me being into Wicca and secretly doing these things, and her kind of figuring out about it. And then now she's also a practicing witch as well. And it's very fascinating getting to having the opportunity to speak to her and ask her about her life with this man who was so influential throughout the 80s and 90s in witchcraft.
Oh yeah.
Who I very much think of as one of our witch ancestors. When we talk about the mighty dead, Scott Cunningham is absolutely included in that.
He was hugely influential for me, and like whenever it came to herbs or crystals, I referred to his stuff. I mean, whenever I did ritual work, I always referred to his like associations, I guess, or a lot of his spell work. So yeah, I use a lot of his shit. Yeah. So Judith, did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
Not ask, but I yes, I did actually, because in your with your writings, you're including the mishaps as well. But and you mentioned the TikTok witches, which I know nothing about. I don't have TikTok, don't know. I just keep hearing about it. Can't believe it's a thing. But two different questions. One, do you believe you are instilling faith and ethical magic with your writings? And how do you feel about the most recent witches that write about magic? Do you think they're missing that?
I don't necessarily think they're missing it. I think that's, another really big question. I do think teaching ethics in witchcraft is a very, very wiggly place. If I can put it any other way, it's a very wiggly place because witchcraft in itself has no inherent ethics. You, as the practitioner, have the ethics and you apply it to your craft. Witchcraft itself is a tool, like anything in nature. A hurricane is not evil. It's not ethical or unethical. It is a force of nature, and it creates and it destroys. Witchcraft is no different. A hammer is a tool. You can use it to build something, or you could use it to smash something. I think that is a big conversation when it comes to witchcraft and magic. And I do think that when it comes to spirituality in general, there are so many dogmas out there that are teaching ethics. Witchcraft isn't a dogma, but your spirituality might be, and that's going to change from person to person. So when it comes to like witch talk and social media and whatnot, you're going to see that wildly differ from person to person. You got those edgelords who are all about the curses. And then you got the healers who are all about love and light, and that's it. And then everything in between.
Yeah, you're so right. Wow.
I actually feel like there's maybe not enough in between. I see the extremes more often than anything in the middle. I see you should never, ever, 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 ever people, and the this is all I do people. And I always say this is, like you said, this is hard to talk about. I just did a class on this the other night. I did a class called The Ethics of Baneful Magic. And it was a very difficult class to get through because I'm not here to tell anyone what their morals should be. I'm not here to tell anyone what their ethics should be. I will say, though, that for the people who I see who are just deeply involved in baneful work, their own lives tend to fall apart. I see it all the time, and I'm not even saying that that's directly the cause, but I will say if you're walking around with hate in your heart, it's poisoning you. Like that's a fact. No matter, I mean, I don't think there's any way around that. I've hexed 2 people in my entire lifetime. One tried to murder someone who's very, very important to me. And the other was Jeffrey Epstein, and the third will probably be Donald Trump. That's it. To me, I don't want to do this unless I see like there's an absolute need for this.
Yeah. You know, I think that's a really good point that we were talking about too. With you know, it really does kind of fall on the practitioner. And like, you know, when I first started this show, it was a little bit more in the conspiracy community, and I was, I guess, trying to like educate them on like it's not all dicks and demons. You know, they're like you know, like it really, like, just because you associate Kabbalah with some fucked up twisted demonic shit and perverted stuff doesn't mean because I'm into the Kabbalah means that that's what I do with my shit. You know, you could be like looking at one form of magic or multiple forms of magic and just like, I don't know, for whatever reason, just demonizing the whole thing. It's like, you know, that really depends on the practitioner, actually. Because you can twist and use anything in either direction, depending on how you want to look at it, I think. You know, so I think that's a very good point to get at, that it's just, you know, really sometimes I think depending, you know, what you're doing, it really is all in the mindset of the practitioner. You could do some great things or some horrible shit. You know, and that's where I think it gets hard. Like for me, sometimes I really just don't even put my own opinion in there. I just present the topic or present people who cover that stuff and just ask them questions, because I'm not here to tell you what to do. This is an option.
Yeah.
That's it. You know? But yeah, thank you. Sorry I'm going on about it, but I just think that is a really good point to make. You know, it really does depend on who's doing the magic, where they are in their head.
That's true, but the thing about Marshall, you're unique. What you do uniquely is you say, I did this and this happened, whether it's good or bad. We always get the good. Do this and this will happen. But we never know the loophole of that disaster that might happen, that might ruin the life or anything like that. And you present that. Do you think that part is missing? I find that part is missing when I'm reading different books on work.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's actually that's a very good point, because I do feel like because so many books are about theory and about practice, but not about the lived experience of that practice. I remember I read a book a while back by Lon Milo DuQuette, Low Magic, and it was someone suggested it to me, and I had not read any of his other work, but I clearly
that was my first book of his too. Yeah,
it was fascinating because it was not a collection of rituals. It was I did this, I used this, this is what happened, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought, like, I want to see more books like this. Many of the spells that I talk about in my diary are ones that I sometimes cast when I was 13 years old, 16 years old, 19 years old, ones that I cast when I was 30 years old, 35, 37. You will definitely notice that the motivation behind it and maturity behind it are very different at different ages. The decisions that I made to try to curse this bully from school, and then the outcome that happened, and the way I might have actually been wrong about who I thought was doing it. That was actually one of the big ones. There was a situation where I cast a hex on someone who was treating me a specific way, or who I believed was, and it was not them. And I had my own experience where I got some, I wouldn't call it blowback, but I would almost say I cast something that was not justified. And I was made very aware that it was not justified, because I do believe in justified magic. I do believe that there is a larger kind, I mean, it's a very, again, a wiggly place of balance. But when it comes to not expecting those bad outcomes, this is actually a really good part where to think about divination before doing magic. Asking the cards, asking the bones, doing divination before you cast to see, first, is this even a good idea? Is this the best way to go about it? Is this the best spell? Is this the best spirit to call? I do think that divination gets forgotten. It feels very separated from spellcraft a lot of times, and I think they can be much more interwoven with each other. I have binary divination bones. It's just asking yes or no questions. Should I do this? Yes or no. Sometimes there's what's it called? Inconclusive. And if that's the case, I need to get more specific with my questions, or more general depending on what I'm asking.
Not to kind of go backwards a little bit, but you had mentioned something about, low magic and Lon Milo. And, like you even inserting your own experiences into your stuff. And then, like, even that we had Thumper Forge on, and his Chaos Apple, I kind of feel was like a little bit like that too, from what I had read. And I really do feel like that those books, when people kind of do that, and it's, not, I haven't read too many. I'm saying, like Thumper Forge, Milo, and what you're doing. They really, for me, they're easy reads for some reason. I seem to go through them a lot better. And if they're good authors and they're actually like kind of getting detailed in a sense, for me, and I guess it depends on the type of person and if they can even visualize things in their brain at all to begin with, because some people do have problems with that. I do visualize a lot of it, and I do think that's what really, like, put it this way too, even giving you props. If you actually can create an image in someone's mind and it's like almost like a movie as they're reading something, that's magical. Because that's going to leave a serious, I think, a more serious imprint in the person, because they're really enveloping themselves into the story. And I think that's pretty impressive, and I think books like that are magical in themselves. So
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of old grimoires, they were believed to be just literally holding them, being in possession of them. They were magic. You go back to the Bibliothèque Bleue period of the French grimoires.
Oh, okay.
They had inscriptions on them. Some people couldn't even read them if they were even in a language they could read. But owning it, wearing it in the hidden pocket of your breast jacket, just having it was an apotropaic, a talisman. So, and these books were small, and sometimes they had different cover jackets because they were hidden. This was a very underground book scenario going on. So, I mean, sometimes just the existence of the book being on your body is itself a magical talisman.
That's wild. You mentioned the Bibliothèque, the blue books. Yeah. A lot of alchemists, like back in Germany, I think too, were like putting, or maybe it was wherever you were saying, they were putting them out. Like it was kind of like pamphlets on like some of their bigger work to like kind of like advertise or whatever. But well, I haven't heard too many people mention that. I was just impressed that you said that. Yeah. And what's really weird, and this is getting conspiratorial, but like when I was like coming across that stuff, I was like, it's so weird how like back then, I guess if you want to translate that over, that'd be Blue Book. And they're talking about magic, and it's like, I guess depending on what you think about aliens or where they're taking the idea of aliens. I'm like, we got Operation Blue Book with that. I'm like, what's the fuck going on here?
Well, there's Blue Book and there's Blue Beam.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just was like, find out. I don't know. There's some weird shit with my conspiratorial mind. But yeah, so sorry to ramble on about that. But yeah, that's cool that you mentioned that. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to ask or add to?
Yeah, Marshall. So only if you don't mind sharing, or if you, however you want to answer this question. Can you share what is your most memorable spell you ever cast and why?
And this is actually a great one because I do talk about it in the diary as well. One that really stood out to me. So I was building a framework of working with familiars. And these familiars were inspired by Gemma Gary's book, Traditional Witchcraft. She has the snake, the hare, the toad, and the crow, and each one of them correspond to the quarter ways, the north, south, east, and west, and each one of them correspond to an element. And the hare of the south corresponds with earth, healing specifically, but also, I mean, there's other connotations under earth, but the hare was the familiar spirit that I wanted to work with in the concept of healing for my mother's partner. She got divorced a few years back and she fell in love with this really amazing man. And within the first year and a half of their relationship, he was diagnosed with uterine cancer. And I asked, would you be okay with me doing a healing working? And he said, absolutely. So I drew a sigil over a picture of him and I put it on one of those novena candles, just a white novena candle. And I fixed it with a few healing herbs and a cunning oil, which is a mixture of an oil that I write about in my first book that is just an all general purpose witch's magic oil. And I said this chant to the familiar hair 9 days in a row, and I would have my chanting beads that have they connect with my familiar spirits that I've built the system with, and I would light the candle and I'd stare at his picture with the sigil over it, with the flame flickering above it or behind it, depending on which day as the flame went down. And for 9 days straight, I do 100 chants with these beads, and I would chant to this hair to travel to him and heal him of this cancer. And I had this whole visualization where I was visualizing this hair popping up from the direction of the south, being in my presence, and then literally hopping down the road all the way to where the house where he lived, crawling up and sitting on his chest and sinking into his body to be one with him and carrying the assignment that I was giving this spirit. I did this 9 days in a row, and then I remember my mother called me about a week later and said that he had had surgery to have the cancerous mass and cells removed. And they went back in to do a check on the margins, and they said, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't think we got it all. We're going to have to go back again. But we're going to monitor it over this next month and a half before we schedule it again. And I was like, Dad, it didn't work. It didn't work. I might have to just do it again. And then I didn't think about it for a while because I was waiting for them to check. And she called me up and she said, he went in and there was no trace of cancer. All the cells were gone, 0 margins, which was completely different diagnosis than they had told him after the first round of checking. And I was just kind of floored by the whole situation. Again, I believe, but also, wow. It was, and it was so important to me, and it mattered so much to me because my mom had fallen in love with this man after 38 years of marriage and 10 years of questioning divorce, and then wondering if she was going to be alone, what her life was going to be like. She got this second chance. And then just as soon as she did, she was afraid she was going to lose this man. And so seeing now that she was not going to lose him, that he was going to be okay. They moved in together. They're still living together and happy as ever now. And he still gets, he still has to get checked up every now and again. It's never come back. And that was 3 years ago.
Okay.
In fact, I have a picture of it in the book. It's the picture of the candle that I used because I was just very big on documenting. I think documentation of our spellcraft and taking pictures of them, even if you're never going to share them publicly, but maybe just for yourself. I think that matters.
It's so important.
And see it right there, the novena, the picture of him on it, my chanting beads around it. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for letting me share.
I think that's so. I like what you said because one of the things that I always find to be wondrous, I suppose, is that you can. I've been practicing magic since I was 15, and I'm 42. I am old, and I'm losing all the color that was ever in my hair. But I can still do a tarot reading and be like, wow, this works so well. It's still amazing. And I don't think that there's any value in losing that.
Never lose your whimsy.
Yeah. It should still give you goosebumps every time. And then that's the coolest thing about it, because with everything else in life, we do lose. You can for example, I haven't touched a guitar in almost a decade, but playing guitar used to be such an important part of my life, and I would play for hours and hours a day. And Eventually, I got to a space where it just did not inspire me at all anymore, and so I stopped playing. And it became more just about frustration about not being at the skill level that I wanted to be at. And that I never get that with Magic. It's just fun and cool, and it works, and it makes your life better.
100%.
I experienced the same thing with the guitar. That's interesting.
It's a frustrating instrument.
I had a lot of fun playing it, but just one day I just kind of stopped, and it was kind of almost like what you had said. I was just frustrated that I wasn't where I would have liked to have been, I guess.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was like buying tickets to every Joe Satriani concert. And,
oh shit! Okay,
like I was so inspired by these guys who could play that way. But then you look at today's musicians, and you're like, I'm done. I give up. These Gen Z, I think it's Gen Z. These kids who are in their early 20s smoke Satriani and Steve Vai, make him look foolish.
That's fine. I was gonna say I was more of a Steve Vai fan. That's funny. You said Satriani. I was like, oh shit, I love Steve Vai. Yeah, that's great. I've been to a couple of G3 concerts. That's great. Nice. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to ask before we? All right. If there's I don't know if there's one thing that you would like to leave us with, Marshall. What would you like for the listeners to get out of all this in your work?
I heard someone say this years ago on Seeking Witchcraft, a podcast I was listening to back in quarantine. And this person she said, be promiscuous with your magic. And I think about that a lot. You see that in the book. You see that in my writing a lot. The experimentation, the promiscuity of trying things out, of building systems that you hope are going to work, working them and then seeing them work, or seeing how they work differently than you thought and then adjusting to it, evolving with it. I think that magic is one of the most craziest, mysterious things. And if I thought I had it all figured out, why not just roll over and die now? I'd rather continue being curious and finding out and learning from, my own experiences, from others' experiences. I hope people step away from trying to be perfect and instead just trying.
Y'all remember that meme from a couple of years ago with the guys like the fuck around and find out chart? That's the most perfect explanation of magic that has ever existed.
And honestly, be promiscuous to your magic is a really nice way of saying fuck around and find out.
Yeah. That's true. I will even say, like, as a ceremonial magician, I mean, there was times where I could literally mind fuck where am I going to put the middle pillar ritual, and am I going to do it before the LBRP, in between, after, this, that. So, like, eventually I would have to just, just wing it and see what works for me. Try it multiple different ways, do this and that, and eventually, for me, I did find my own rhythm that I just felt natural. So, yes. I totally agree there, Marshall. Great stuff.
Thank you.
All right. Before we wrap it all up, Judith, let's remind everybody where they can find all your amazing stuff.
First, thank you, Marshall, for a wonderful conversation. I would love to continue having conversations with you on this topic. Everyone else, you could find me on YouTube, Spreaker, and X as The Loon. And again, thank you again. This is a wonderful conversation.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for joining us, Judith. And Sanre, please let everybody know.
Yeah, the same sentiment, Marshall. I love interacting with you. This has been really a lot of fun. I'm really excited to read the new book, and it's you can get it now, right?
Absolutely. It's available on Amazon, ebook and paperback.
Killer. Yeah, I can't wait. I love that you did this. I love the way you write. You're a huge inspiration to me. So this has been a lot of fun. And thanks for having me on again. And
no, of course,
it's been great.
No, thank you for jumping on, man. I appreciate it. That was awesome. That was a great time. And Marshall, please let everybody know where they can find anything you'd like to tell them about.
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for having me. It's truly been a pleasure. If you want to find me, please look me up on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. I do a lot of shit posting on Threads. And I also do a lot of like horror movie posting. I love horror.
Oh,
movies.
nice. Cool.
on threads and things that I'm watching, and a lot of them have to do with the occult and witchcraft. So you can find me on all of these at Witch of Southern Light. Buy my books, Cunning Words, A Grimoire of Tales and Magic, The Red Mother, and The Diary of an American Witch, all available on Amazon. And check out the link tree and all of my profiles. I have everything you could want that I've ever put out on there: my Patreon, the podcast, my books, and a lot of free resources: herbal correspondences, planetary correspondences, how to work with planetary spirits, making herbal tinctures, lots of just free information that people can have.
Yeah, your link tree is very impressive. I was looking through it before we started. I'm like, whoa, damn.
And it's not all my stuff. It's stuff that I've accumulated that has helped me. And I was like, if this helped me, this could help other practitioners. So I just put in my link tree so everyone has that free access.
Very cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. Nice. Yeah, I might have to check that out. Marshall, thank you so much for coming on. That was a blast. I really had a great time. That was a lot of fun. And I thought that was some really good I felt like there was some deep points there, and then there was, I thought overall it was a great discussion. And I would definitely
a nice balance.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes, I thought exactly. Definitely get you on again in the future and talk about some other stuff for sure. I'm sure you have a plethora of things that would be interesting. And thank you everybody in the chat. That's what's up. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Judith, for mentioning the questions. Appreciate you. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.